Chris Phelan with Horsepower Brands. I'm here with our founder of Horsepower, Zach Butler, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about validation. So Zach, when it comes to validation, what is validation and why is that important throughout the development process?
Well, every brand is validation somewhat different, but essentially it's your ability to validate what you're hearing with both the franchisees as well as with the brand employees or the leadership of the brand.
Gotcha. And then what are some common questions that a candidate would bring to validation, whether it's on the brand side or to a franchisee that's in the day-to-day?
Well, I think you have to separate it into several categories. So let's just start with probably the most important, which is being able to talk with franchisees that are living this each and every day. And that's where you're going to get the most amount of value and the most amount of that's where you're going to get real life things of what it's like to be an owner. So if you're sticking with that, I think everyone wants to know, what's your experience been like? Would you do it again? Have you made any money? What's your results look like? There's lots of different questions. I think every candidate has their own internal questions that they need answered to feel good about moving forward with the opportunity, and that's your place to do it.
Yeah, and what better way than to hear directly from the horse's mouth or people that have actually been in the seat?
Yeah, there's different types of franchisee personality, so you have to understand what stage of their business are they in. There's this 12-month evolution of, we call it the psychological roller coaster, where the first 3 months, it's a honeymoon, everything's going really well, and then at about 3 months something happens where something breaks, somebody quits, something doesn't work, and for the next 6 months you kind of hate your life a little bit. And you're like, why did I do this? And then all of a sudden it really starts coming together. Your average ticket gets better, your close ratio gets better, your advertising gets dialed in, your referrals start coming through, and you see this hockey stick of growth. You really got to understand what stage is that person in, because if they're in month 6, they're right in the mix of where they're trying to fix all these problems, they still don't have it down well. If they're past a year, they're probably in a good place. If they're in the first 90 days, they're loving life.
Yeah, and then can you explain just the different types of validation calls we have? So I know we have one with franchisees and then brand, and then kind of like our Horsepower corporate. Can you just get into detail on a few of those?
Yeah, we were very strategic about how we created the validation schedule. And so we have one call with franchisees, and it's any franchisee that will volunteer their time to give to the system. And so that's a call. It's a 1-hour call in the afternoon. The second one is brand specific, so it's the brand leadership. One call is going to be the brand president or CEO of that brand, and it's the past, present, and future of the brand. We have one on the marketing strategy overall. We have one on, depending on the brands, there's equipment, or it's the major parts of what you need to understand about that brand and who you want to talk to. The third is Horsepower Brands is an umbrella company with different layers of leadership. So what makes us unique is if a brand is experiencing a problem and they can't solve it, they can elevate that problem to a more experienced team of leadership. And so on a day of the week we have where you get to speak to myself, you get to speak to my partner Josh Golnick, our CEO Tony Holbert, or one of our COOs, where you can really get a sense of how Horsepower operates, what our core values are, the history, what's important to us.
So Zach, with your experience in franchising, what's some tips or tricks that you could give to our candidates that are actually attending validation?
So when you're in validation, Chris, and you're talking to franchisees, it's very important to understand how they grew their business. And I've always broken down the journey of growing a business into really 3 main categories in franchising. The first is a franchisee that is very risk averse. They have a hard time and a very little appetite for risk. And so what will happen is their business will get to a level of capacity to where they need to add more infrastructure, equipment, advertising dollars, or they need to add more that takes capital. And they're very reluctant to do that. And so what they do is they wait, and during that time period they're going to pay off debt, stack some cash. But what's going to happen is they're going to slowly lose that momentum because people want things now. They want, they're going to lose some work based on their backlog because how fast they can service the jobs. Right. The second category is the people that have some appetite, but not quite enough. And so what they're going to do, and let's just use a brand as equipment for an example, they're going to get their first piece of equipment to capacity, and they're going to maybe wait a little too long to add the next piece of equipment, but they actually don't increase advertising or infrastructure. They just divide the current capacity across multiple pieces of equipment. That creates some cash flow constraints and some stress. The third is the more aggressive-minded franchisee, and what's happening is before they get to capacity, they know it's coming, and they add more equipment, increase advertising dollars, and at times even add sales reps. What that does is it keeps the backlog of work to a lower number of weeks, and that will allow them to win more jobs, and you automatically already give a better experience. If I'm a homeowner and I want a fence, for an example, and I pay you a deposit, and I don't get it installed for 16 weeks, I'm already looking for reasons to be upset. I'm looking for reasons because it's taking this long, versus if I paid you the money you did the next day, it was amazing. I paid him, they came in and did a great job. You're less likely to create conflict in that process. So that third franchisee grows their business at a faster pace, but they're taking on more calculated risk. When you're in validation, you really got to understand what type of person are you dealing with, because if all you do is judge your decision to move forward or not based on one of those, you're not getting a very clear picture. And how you grow the business, you got to go on your own journey. And so I think it's good to understand those 3 segments of growth.
Yeah, that's great insight. Zach, as you've talked to a lot of people going through the development process in franchising in general, you've got the first-time franchisee, you've had people that have owned other businesses. What's kind of the different types of conversations you've had with those people?
It's fascinating. When I look back, there's specific people I remember, and when you talk to people and it's their first business, it's their baby. What the business does and represents is fairly important to their identity. And you find that they gravitate towards what they're passionate about. That's the typical first-time business owner. The person that's grown a business and sold it, or maybe got out of it, and they look at the second business, what they're really looking for is the logistics of running the business. They want less stress, less bumps in the road, so that they can enjoy the journey more. And so they're looking at how hard it's going to be to run, what's it going to be like finding labor, what's the customer acquisition strategy. What the business does is fairly relevant. The person that's done it for the third time is looking at something entirely different. They're looking at how to scale that business. They're typically coming with more capital, so they want something that they can scale up at a fast pace, and they can get a much bigger return on their capital and their time. And so when you're in the process, and everybody has their own journey to go through, but that's a different perspective on people with different levels of business experience. And so if in our process, if we only tailor it to one type of personality with one level of experience, there's a lot of, we don't really create the best experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you shedding light on what I deem is one of the most important processes in the development phase.